Hello and welcome to Dr. T Time. Today I want to focus on a specific scripture, scriptures in 1 Samuel chapter 17. Now, if you're not familiar with the story of David and Goliath, please read chapter 17 in its entirety. But I want to focus not on the whole chapter, but certain points because this is very powerful. And it's really about how David was indirectly prepared to fight. So it could come across as okay, he was just very zealous, or to some, according to the Bible, was brothers rather, he was considered arrogant or puffed up, but it was none of that. It was one word, and you'll see what I'm talking about as I go through this. Because this young man, in his youth, he was able to do things that people just did not ordinarily do. He was a shepherd at heart, and he was a young shepherd boy. If you could go back and read this, you will see. Now, I'm going to go start at verse 32, and I'm going to stop when necessary to get to the points that I want to share because this is so powerful. Remember, it's one word that is really the basis of the whole situation. In reference to David and his stand on what he felt like he could do, or of course what he felt like he could do, but deeper than that. So it says he this before that he goes to Saul because he hears all this ranting going on, and like, what is the commotion? All this man went to do was give his brothers some food and some things that his father sent him to do. That's all he was trying to go do. Okay. When he gets here, he sees a setup of a showdown going on, and he's like, what is going on right now? So he'd been asking these people questions, and he was getting the same answers. So he goes and says this: don't worry about the Philistines, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth. Okay? Listen to this. Goliath has been a man of war since his youth. David, on the other hand, he was a shepherd boy. You see the contrast? That's how people looked at David. Oh, he's just a shepherd boy. But what you about to hear, David was more than just a shepherd boy. David was a warrior shepherd. But he wasn't known about that part. Okay? But to David's offense, this is what he said. But David persisted. He said he had been taking care of his father's sheep and goats. And when a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, he said he'd go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from his mouth. He didn't say one when it has happened on one or two occasions. And I know there are times I've heard people teach this lesson. And when I used to hear people teaching it when at some point, some time ago, I thought it was just a one or two time occasion. I did not know, like for example, I know Samson. Samson, he would do stuff like that. And we know that he did it like maybe one occasion. Now with David, this really surprised me because I was like, oh my goodness, this was not a one time deal. David did this on a regular basis. He said he'd go after with a club and rescue the lamb from his mouth. He said if the animal turns on him, he said he catch it by the jaw and club it to death. This is what he did. So again, he was a warrior shepherd, but they only saw David, what he presented to them as far as the shepherd side of it. They didn't see his work in detail because when he was unselected, he was out in the field shepherding when everybody else was in the house or wherever they came from to gather. He wasn't even considered, okay? He out of 8 boys, he was never considered. He was the baby of them all, and that's who the Lord chose because the Lord had a purpose. Now he goes on to say, he have done this to both lions and bears. Now you know a lion is no joke. He is the king of the jungle. And David took lions out and bears? Come on now. He said, and he'll do it to that pagan Philistine. And he was talking about how that Philistine had defied God's army. He talked about how the Lord who rescued him from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue him from this Philistine. And this is where the word, I'm assuming you already know now, comes into play that I want to stress. This man had faith. He did not go by what he could do. He had faith in the God that gave him the ability and the strength, okay, to deal with them. Now this is the second time we read in the book of Samuel, okay? The second chapter we read in the book of Samuel where these mighty men of the Lord did not have a weapon. Now we had a whole army of Israelites didn't have a weapon, and God beat their enemies for them. Now we have David, who, when he goes into battle, if you already read it, against Goliath, he had a weapon, but not the typical weapons that everybody else normally have when they go to war. So I wanted to make a point. He fought with faith, not with what he had. What he had was a tool that was executed by his faith, because David would not have been able to knock Goliath out with just the one rock and that slingshot. It was not the rock and the sling that did it. It was the faith behind it. Faith did that in the Lord. His faith in Yahweh. He had faith in Yahweh because he clearly said the same God that he said the same God that delivered him, okay, from the lion and the actual bear is the same one. Okay? Let me stress that. He said the Lord who rescued him from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue him from this Philistine. So it was by faith. He used the rock by faith in Yahweh knocked Goliath out till he was no more. That's what it was. It was not in what he had. Some people look at it, oh, he had this. No, he had faith. That's what did it. It was faith in Yahweh. And he had used the testimony of himself based on what Yahweh had done in the past, because he had a relationship and understanding of what Yahweh could do. And that's what I'm going to close on. David won the battle by faith, not weapon. Not a weapon. The Israelites, prior to that, God's grace was upon them. They didn't have a weapon, but they had a lot of fear. If you read before, some chapters before, they had a lot of fear. So it wasn't based on, their situation was more like God's grace and mercy did that for them, because that was on a time where they could not have their own weapons or make their own weapons, because the Philistines would not allow them for fear of, if they made their own weapons, that they could use it against them. So they had to go to the Philistines as far as the blacksmith work. That's who they had to go to, because they were not allowed to have their own blacksmiths, as the Philistines were in rule over them at that time. So as you can see, they rebelled against Philistines because they wanted to be free from that particular toxic dictatorship. And the Lord had to fight for them. And the reason why they went in that kind of isolation or captivity is because of sin. So David was a tool that was after God's own heart, based on his consistency and perseverance to make sure he stayed committed to the Lord. He had some hiccups along the road, but prior to that, and even after he messed up real bad, he really had a heart for the Lord. He did pay the consequences, but he kept his heart towards the Lord. But there was a time his heart was not in the Lord. And there was a time he messed up. And when he messed up, he didn't even recognize that he had he didn't even recognize that he was disconnected. He didn't have a heart of repentance until it was brought to his attention. Now, I am telling you a foreshadow of information that's already written ahead of this story, but I just want to bring that up because it starts here. Okay? Before we get to the David who messed up, we need to look at the David before he messed up and how he wasn't known to the world. He wasn't even respected by his brothers. They thought, well, one of his older brothers thought he was just being a little arrogant kid. He didn't even know the power of faith that his brother walked in. So you can imagine the showdown that happened after that. Can you imagine? He defeated the enemy of his entire country. Then he had to fight against his own leader that he respected so much. He wasn't trying to take Saul's place. It was already God's plan because Saul messed up himself. But David really loved Saul and respected him. Oh my goodness. Anywho, you will have to tune in next time. Make sure you read the word for yourself. Please do not take what I am telling you as a gospel fact. I want you to always fact check. Please fact check everything I say. If you choose not to fact check other people, what have you, because you just don't want to, or they put fear in you, intimidate you, and tell you don't question them, okay, you know what? That's on you. I would not say that. It is unbiblical to tell somebody don't fact check, don't question them because they're in a position of authority. It is right to question anyone in a position of authority, okay? You want to make sure that whoever is in authority is giving you the right flavor of tea. It is important that you drink the right tea. Drink the tea that comes from the purity of the fountain of Jesus. If someone gives you tea that doesn't come from Jesus' fountain, you don't have to drink it, and you do not have to sit in their company, and that's biblical. Okay? So I just hope that these words have found you well. And until the next time you sit with me, stay focused and enjoy your tea.